Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we're going over my core plays for week 13 of the NFL season on Draftkings. Before we continue though, if you guys could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, really appreciate it. You also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPinell16. And in the comments below, I want to know who your guys' lock of the week is this week. As for example, mine is Devontae Adams. I think he's just a little bit too cheap there. It's a good matchup. He's getting good volume, and we will talk about him later. So in the comments below, who is your lock of the week? And my spreadsheets are available in the link description below, as well as my Discord. And without further ado, I say we get right into the video. So sorry this video is coming out later in the week. I think Friday should probably just be the new norm because I'm busy with NBA, and obviously Thanksgiving was yesterday, so I was a little busy yesterday. So by Friday, it's just more time to get research. And I used to get this video out on like Tuesdays way back earlier in the season, but that was with just one sport. So NBA kind of gets into some time. But anyway, let's get into this. So Nick Foles, 5,700 versus Tampa Bay. He was in my example lineup video, and that has carried over into the core play section for this week. I just think he's a fantastic option this week, and he comes in at a good price, and it's a good matchup. We have a 47.5 point over-under, which is second highest on the slate, only behind that Kansas City-Oakland game. And they are 1 point dogs, and I do believe this is going to be a pass-heavy attack for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tampa Bay is a pass-funnel defense. They're 25th DVOA versus the pass and are allowing 25 points per game to quarterbacks, which is second most in the NFL, only behind the Arizona Cardinals. And they're allowing 305 yards passing and 2.36 passing touchdowns per game, all near league worst. And they're, like I said, this is a pass funnel defense. They are first DVOA versus the run. They've shut down many good running backs this season. I do think Leonard Fournette will have a tough time running the ball, but that doesn't mean he can't have a good game because he can be involved in the passing game as well, which he has been involved in all season. And the past two games, he's averaging 47.5 pass attempts in the last two starts, and that's with them trailing, and I can see them trailing in this game versus Tampa Bay. And he's got good pass catchers in DJ Chark, D.D. Westbrook, and I'm going to say Kawhi Leonard, Leonard Fournette. So I think Nick Foles should have a fantastic day here at his price tag. Do I think he's going to come out and drop 30 points? No, but he's only 5,700, and I think he can get you 250 plus yards with 2 to 3 touchdowns with upside of more in this matchup. So Nick Foles, definitely like him this week, and I like his price tag. Then my next quarterback I like is Carson Wentz. He comes in at 5,800 versus Miami. I liked him last week, but earlier in the week I should say. Then later in the week I trailed off of him a little bit because of all the injuries. Aguilar was hurt, Alshon Jeffrey was hurt, Lane Johnson was out, but it was a good matchup. But the weather was also a little bit crummy. He still outscored Matt Ryan last week, which is a positive, but like I said, it's been ugly. His recent games are 9 fantasy points, 14 points, 15, 13, 12, but this is mainly just a price and matchup play, and the Eagles are getting healthy. They got Lane Johnson back, who's their stud right tackle. Alshon Jeffrey's back at practice, and so is Nelson Aguilar, which, Nelson Aguilar isn't the most fantastic option, either as Alshon Jeffrey, but it definitely helps getting these guys back, especially Lane Johnson, just more time to throw the ball. And I know he's dealing with that hand injury, but he should be good to go. Carson Wentz, that is. And we have a 27.5 implied team total for the Philadelphia Eagles. And this kind of feels like the Baker Mayfield play last week. I can't remember exactly how expensive Baker Mayfield was, but he was right around this price range. And, Baker Mayfield wasn't having the best of season. I mean, he's been fine in recent weeks. He's been doing better than Carson Wentz. But he crushed versus Miami, and pretty much everyone just crushes versus Miami. They are 32nd DVOA versus the pass, and they're allowing 23 points per game to quarterbacks, which is fourth most in the NFL. And they're also allowing 260 yards and 2.36 touchdowns per game. If Carson Wentz can get me 250 and 2 to 3 touchdowns, I will take that all day, 5,800. I do think he will be able to do so. Now, Zach Ertz is dealing with a hamstring injury, so Zach Ertz is out. I will have to downgrade Carson Wentz a bit because that's his best option. But I still think he would be fine. But make sure you monitor the news on that. And if Zach Ertz is out, Dallas Goedert becomes one of the best plays at tight end this week. Then for the spend-up quarterback, I like Patrick Mahomes here at 7,400. He's my top spend-up quarterback option of the week. We have a 51-point over-under in this game, a 30.5 implied team total, which is highest on the slate. And then week 2, he had 434 yards and 4 touchdowns and 35 fantasy points versus Oakland in week 2, which is, he almost did all of that in one quarter. I don't know if you guys saw that, but the second quarter he went absolutely ballistic and just scorched the entire Oakland defense. Really didn't do much after that, but pretty much did all of his damage in one quarter, but that's just what Patrick Mahomes can do. Now, he hasn't been amazing recently, but he's still got this upside every single week. He's got all of his weapons healthy, and Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, although I believe Sammy Watkins was dealing with an illness, but it's not like it's like a hamstring or anything. In Oakland, they are allowing 23.4 points per game to quarterbacks, which is third most in the NFL. They are also 30th DVOA versus the pass, which is third worst. And they're allowing 286 passing yards and 2.36 touchdowns per game. Patrick Mahomes, he's very expensive, but if you want to spend up, I think he is going to shred this defense. So definitely like Patty Mahomes here. Then one more option, and I know you got to take a deep breath and sit down to be able to stomach this play because he has been awful. But we got Jared Goff here at 6K versus Arizona. We have a 47.5 point total, which is right up there with the Jacksonville game. So I believe it's tied for second highest on the slate. And they're only 3-point favorites, so I don't think this game gets out of hand. The Rams have not been great this season. They are not the same team they were last season. I think we all know that now. But like Carson Wentz, it's been very ugly for Jared Goff. Even worse for Jared Goff. He scored 6 points in his last 3 games, which was versus Pittsburgh, Chicago, Baltimore, and they were all tough matchups. He hasn't thrown a touchdown since, I believe, October 27th. That's crazy for Jared Goff, man. But this is a great matchup for him. He's Arizona's 28th DVOA versus the pass. They're allowing 27.8 points per game to quarterbacks, which is most in the NFL. And they're allowing 315 passing yards and 2.64 touchdowns per game. That's just an average. And if you're going to tell me Jared Goff's getting 315 and 2.5 to 3 touchdowns, I'm all about that at 6K, and I think he can do so. I know he sucks, especially when he's under pressure in tough matchups, but in good he's actually excelled in good matchups so far this season. He had 25 points versus Atlanta and Cincinnati. He had 27 versus Tampa Bay, and this matchup does not get any better. It would not surprise me if he came out and threw 4 touchdowns, maybe 2 to Kupp, 1 to like someone like Tyler Higbee, and 1 to Brandon Cooks or something. So Jared Goff, I do think he is an interesting option this week at 6K. I know it sucks. It's going to hurt to put him in your lineups. I know it's going to be hard to trust, but everyone has a good game versus Arizona, so I definitely think you can play him. As for the running back position, always every single week, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey as the number 1. I don't care who he's playing. I said last week I wasn't going to play him versus the Saints, which I did fine last week, but it didn't matter. He still scored 30-plus points versus the Saints, even though they have a great run defense. And he's 10,500 this week going up against Washington, the same price he's been the past 3 weeks. And with Christian McCaffrey, you know what you're getting. You're getting your volume, you're getting your talent, and you're getting efficiency from the guy. He's averaging 27.5 touches per game, which is most in the NFL. 20.09 rushing attempts, which is second only behind Nick Chubb. 7.45 targets per game, which is second only behind Alvin Kamara. And a 20% target share, which is again only behind Alvin Kamara. He's averaging 155 total yards per game, which is the most in the NFL, only in front of Dalvin Cook by over 20 yards. And he's averaging 32.5 Draftkings points per game. The guy is incredible, and he's a 10-point home favorite. That's always a good correlation for my running backs. Not like it really matters with Christian McCaffrey. If they're down 40, he's still going to be a good play because he's heavily involved in the passing game. Even if they're winning by 30, he's still a fantastic option. And Washington is a good matchup. They're 21st DVOA versus the run. They're allowing 26.6 points per game to running backs, which is 10th most. And they're allowing 112 rushing yards per game. I don't see how Christian McCaffrey doesn't get you 30-plus points here. It would not surprise me if he got into the end zone 3 times. Since they're going to be playing with the lead here, they're going to grind it out with CMC. He's going to get his 7 targets per game. So Christian McCaffrey, definitely the top play of the slate. In cash games, I'm going to try to find a way to get him in my lineups because if I fade him in cash, I think I'm probably going to be dead because I think he's going to go off. So definitely like CMC here this week. Then Saquon Barkley, he comes in at 7,400. I do think he's a pretty good option this week. And it feels like I'm picking a lot of guys that have struggled recently. I like Carson Wentz, I like Jared Goff, and I like Saquon Barkley because he has struggled recently. But this price and matchup is drawing me in here. He's getting 20.8 touches per game, which is 8th most in the NFL. So the volume's still there. The efficiency really hasn't been there, but the talent's there for sure. And it's a good matchup. Green Bay is 28th DVOA versus the run, and they're allowing 114 yards per game on the ground. And they're allowing 29.5 points per game to running backs, which is 3rd most in the NFL. And we're getting a big discount here from his usual price. I ran the numbers. His average salary this season is $88.25. So we're getting a $14.25 discount on his usual price. So we are getting some Black Friday savings off of Saquon Barkley. And if you absolutely can't find a way to get CMC in, I'm thinking doubling up on some 7K backs this week is definitely a viable strategy. But I prefer to get up to CMC. Yes, he's got the ceiling. He's got the consistency, something Saquon Barkley does not have. But he's definitely cheap enough at 7,400 where I think he is a pretty good option this week. Then moving down here, we kind of get into the less appealing fantasy options at running back. But Le'Veon Bell, he comes in at 7,200 versus Cincinnati. He didn't even get a picture. But he's been consistently okay the past 4 weeks in good matchups. He had 20 versus Miami, 16 versus New York, 17 versus Washington, and 15 versus Oakland. Not games that are going to just absolutely jump out to you and win you a week. But it's not killing you either. I think he's been very, very solid, and he's going to get your volume. You don't get the efficiency, but like CMC though, but still get your volume. 21.3 touches per game, which is 7th most in the NFL. But he has been very efficient, like I said. Only has 3.2 yards per carry, which is right around David Montgomery range. We know how bad he's been. Although he had a pretty good Thanksgiving, not too bad. But 18% target share for Le'Veon Bell, which I do like. And since this is a great matchup versus the Bengals, they're 25th DVA versus the run, allowing 28.6 points per game to running backs, which is 6th most in the NFL. And they're allowing 120 rushing yards per game. Le'Veon Bell, I think he's going to be fine. If he doesn't get to the end zone, we're probably going to be pretty disappointed here. But he's going to be involved in the passing game. He's going to be involved in the ground. Should get you 20, 25 touches in this game. If he gets into the end zone once or twice, we're definitely going to be happy at 7,200. And like I said, if you can't get all the way to CMC, which I really think you should, I don't mind maybe going with Saquon Barkley and Le'Veon Bell. Wouldn't be the worst combo in the world. But I do think Le'Veon Bell's a solid option this week. Probably doesn't have the highest ceiling in the world, but definitely should be solid. Then we got Miles Sanders here at 5,400 going up against Miami. And this is contingent on Jordan Howard news, but last time I looked, he is yet to be cleared for contact, so I only have to assume he is going to be out. In the past 2 weeks with Howard out, he's played 84 and 85% of the team's snaps compared to his usual 30 to 40% range. He also has 9 targets in the past 2 weeks and 28 touches in those 2 weeks. And this is an elite matchup versus Miami. They're allowing 29.1 points per game to running backs, which is 4th most. And they're 29th DVA versus the run, and are allowing 130 rushing yards per game. And Philly has the number 1 offensive line versus defensive line run blocking matchup of the week. And they're also 10-point favorites. So Miles Sanders, I think, is a fantastic option. If you want to play him with Carson Wentz, I think you can do that because Miles Sanders will be involved in the passing game. Is it my favorite correlation in the world? No, but I do think it's viable. It's not like Miles Sanders won't catch any passes. I think my camera's a little bit out of focus here, but hopefully it fixes itself soon. But anyway, yeah, Miles Sanders, I think he is a pretty good flex option for your cash game lineups. And then Phillip Lindsay comes in a little bit cheaper. He's only 5K, and I really don't have much to say about the guy, but I do think he's a solid option. The last 2 games, Phillip Lindsay has 31 touches, 64 and 54% of the snaps, and Royce Freeman has 13 touches and 30% and 56% of the snaps. So he actually played more snaps last week than Phillip Lindsay, but Lindsay is definitely out touching him right now, and this is a very good matchup versus the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 27th DVOA versus the run, and are allowing 28.1 points per game to running backs, which is 8th most in the NFL. So Phillip Lindsay at 5K, he was pretty high owned last week. He was higher owned than I thought he would be. And I'd have to expect he's going to have some ownership again this week at 5K. Maybe not the most chalky guy in the world, but he's got upside, and he's going to get the first crack at touches. So definitely like Phillip Lindsay at only 5K. I also think he's another solid flex option as well. And as for wide receivers, this is my lock of the week. I'm going to try my best to fit him in with Christian McCaffrey. And he's only 7K going up against the Giants, and that's the reason I like him so much. He's only 7K going up against the Giants. That is way too cheap for someone like Davante Adams. And he's going to be the chalk wide receiver of the week. He's simply mispriced for his talent and matchup and the volume he gets. His past 4 games played, which is including the Week 4 game, he has 48 targets, and the Giants are 27th DVA versus the pass. They're allowing 43.3 points per game to wide receivers, which is 2nd most in the NFL. And Adams has PFF's number 1 wide receiver versus cornerback matchup of the week with a 40% advantage versus corners Janoris Jenkins and DeAndre Baker. So I definitely like Davante Adams here. I think he's going to explode. I think he gets you 20-plus points with upside of 30. I think a multiple touchdown game is not out of the question. The Packers have a 26.5 point implied team total. So Davante Adams, I think he's a fantastic option. And you could definitely pair him with Aaron Rodgers in GPPs. I'm about to get really close to my camera because I think it's out of focus. I'm just trying to refocus it on my face, and I think it's all right now. So I think we're good. Okay. But anyway, Davante Adams, definitely my favorite play on this slate, right up there with Christian McCaffrey. And more of a GPP option, and this one with Cooper Kupp at 7,100 versus Arizona. Now, his production has fallen off a cliff from earlier in the season, so I grabbed some of his game logs and I put them on the screen here. So the first 5 weeks, he had 10 targets, 9 targets, 12, 15, 7, and he had 11 points, 20, 36, 29, 29. The guy was straight balling out. Then since week 6, he has 5 points, 11, 36, 0, 8, and 9, and the targets are 6, 8, 10, 4, 3, 10. Yes, the production has fallen off a clip, but this is the best wide receiver on this team, and this is a fantastic matchup, and I do think he's an excellent pairing with Jared Goff. People might be scared to go with the Rams, considering how bad they've been, and I totally understand that. So if they're going to be at least a little bit lower owned, I think you could definitely plug them in some GPP lineups, especially with this Kupp and Jared Goff pairing. As Arizona is allowing 40 points per game to wide receivers, which is 6th most, and is 28th DVOA versus the pass. They're also allowing 27.8 points per game to slot wide receivers, which is most in the NFL. And Cooper Kupp runs the slot 74% of the time. So Cooper Kupp, I think he's going to be in for a big game here. So is Jared Goff, and I definitely like the idea of pairing them up in GPPs. And I also think Kupp's a fine cash game option. But I'm going to play Davante Adams at 7K over Cooper Kupp, and I have a hard time seeing myself being able to fit in McCaffrey, Davante Adams, and Cooper Kupp. So I think Kupp is a decent pivot off of Adams in GPPs. But I'd rather play Adams, though. Just saying, there's a decent pivot there. The next wide receiver is DJ Chark here, and I apologize, the background's not too pretty for DJ Chark. I had to make my own transparent image. I had to do it for Adams, too. His came in a lot more clear, as you can see. But I'm not really a photo editor, but it came out nicer. But this one's a little fuzzy here, so just don't mind the picture. But DJ Chark here at 6,600 versus Tampa Bay. I think him and Foles make an excellent stack this week. It's not going to go low owned or anything, but I definitely think it's an awesome stack. He has 21 targets the past 2 weeks with Nick Foles. This is a 47.5 point total. Points are going to be scored in this game. I do think the Jaguars are going to go with a pass-heavy attack here, especially if they fall behind. And Tampa is 25th DVOA versus the pass. They're allowing 49.7 points per game to wide receivers, which is most in the NFL. They're allowing 206 receiving yards per game to wide receivers and 1.64 touchdowns, all near league worst. And he has 8 touchdowns, which is second in the NFL right now. And I also like D.D. Westbrook, his teammate, quite a bit. So definitely like the Jaguars passing attack here. And if you can get all the way to DJ Chark, I do think D.D. Westbrook is a fine option as well. And I think my laptop's about to die soon, so hopefully we can get through this video before it dies. But Devontae Parker at 5,700 going up against Philly. So he's been actually a model of consistency, which is something hard to believe with a guy like Devontae Parker, but it's just true. He has double-digit points in 9 out of 11 games so far this season. He has 31 targets the past 3 weeks, so the volume's there, and the guy's talented too, and he's been showing it recently as well, with Ryan Fitzpatrick just gunslinging it towards him. He has 21% target share and a 32% market share of the team's air yards. He can hit the big play. He's not just a dink and dunk guy. And Philly is allowing 39.9 points per game to wide receivers this season, which is 7th most in the NFL. And they are 10-point dogs, as they pretty much are every single week. So this is going to be a positive game script, like always, for Devontae Parker. It's going to be a pass-heavy attack for Miami. They're not going to be able to run the ball. Philly has a great run defense, so they're definitely more of a pass-funnel defense. Although their pass defense has gotten a little bit better from earlier in the season, as they have gotten a little bit healthy, but he should see Jalen Mills a decent amount of the time. He's not the best corner in the world, pretty slow. So Devontae Parker should be able to hit a big play or two versus Philly, hopefully get into the end zone. And at 5,700, I do think he is a pretty good option. Then Tyler Boyd, I like him more in GPPs, but he's 5,500 here going up against the New York Jets. And he does get Andy Dalton back, which I know he had a good game with Ryan Finley last week, but I trust Andy Dalton more than I trust Ryan Finley. Not like it's saying much, but Tyler Boyd did have some pretty good games with Andy Dalton earlier in the season. So I do like that the connection is back. And they are 3-point dogs here, and it should be a positive game script for Tyler Boyd to get double-digit targets. And he's averaging 9 targets per game on the season, and he has a 24% target share. And the Jets, they have a very good run defense. So I do think the Bengals are going to struggle to run the ball here. We know their offensive line sucks, and they are 2nd DVOA versus the run. But they're also 17th DVOA versus the pass, which isn't awful, but it's a lot better to pass on these guys than it is to run. The Jets are allowing 39.7 points per game to wide receivers, which is 8th most in the NFL. And they're also allowing nearly 20 points per game to slot wide receivers. So Tyler Boyd, he's the main slot receiver here. I think he's going to have a pretty solid game, and I don't mind. If you play Le'Veon Bell, I think running it back with Tyler Boyd wouldn't be the worst play in the world, just because he's going to get the targets on this team. And I do think the Bengals are going to be able to pass the ball a little bit on these guys, and I do think most of that comes from Tyler Boyd. It wouldn't surprise me if he had like 12 targets, 9 catches, over 100 yards, maybe get into the end zone. Then moving on to tight ends. I apologize if it sounds like I'm talking fast, but I got 9% left on my battery, and all the software here runs it down quick. But Travis Kelce, he's 7,400 going up against Oakland. And I don't typically spend up for tight end, but a case can be made here for Kelce this week. I actually did spend up for him week 2, and it ended up working out pretty good as he had his best game of the season versus them, where he had 7 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown, good for 26 fantasy points. It feels like he hasn't been great this year, but his worst game is 9.8 fantasy points, so he's been consistently solid. Just really hasn't had much of those big boom games besides the Oakland game. And we have a 51-point over-under here. The Chiefs have a 30.5 implied team total, which is the highest on the slate. And Oakland is allowing 14.5 points per game to tight ends, which is 5th most in the NFL. And Oakland is also 30th DVA versus the pass. And I think this will be Kelce's first multi-touchdown game of the year. Would not surprise me if he got like 8 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. Last year, near the end of the season, we saw Kelce drop 3 touchdowns on these guys, almost 4. So I do think Kelce smashes here. Definitely like him if you want to spend up for him. I think he's one of the safest plays on the slate with a ton of upside. So I do like Travis Kelce. And then if you're spending down, I like Jack Doyle here at 3,300 going up against Tennessee. Eric Ebron was placed on IR, which leaves Doyle as the main guy at tight end, which he already was the main guy, but it just helps solidify it. And his snaps have been around 70%, but I would expect that to climb a bit as Ebron was consistently in that 40% snap range. Ebron was also getting 5 targets per game, so you have to think Doyle gets a little bit more of those. I believe Doyle was like at 3.9 targets per game, so I think you could expect a little bit, 5 to 6 targets in this game for him. In Tennessee, it's a decent matchup. They're more middle of the road, but they're bottom half. They're allowing 12.8 points per game to tight ends, which is 13th most in the NFL, and I would expect him to be the chalk tight end of the week, because it's going to be hard to pay up for Kelce unless you're just going out of your way to pay up for Kelce. You're not going to just build your lineup and be like, oh, hey, look, Kelce fits. I got 7,400 left. That's not what's typically going to happen. So I think Jack Doyle is going to be the way you want to go in cash gains, but Travis Kelce is also a fantastic option as well. And keep an eye on Zach Ertz, because if Zach Ertz would be out somehow, Dallas Goedert would be a pretty good option this week. I believe he's 4,200. Then for some other targets I have, just not my main targets, but some other interesting options. I like Aaron Rodgers here at 6,500 going up against, I realize I just used a period instead of a comma. Gotta fix that, it's gonna bother me. Isn't that in Mexico where they use the periods instead of the commas, I think, for that? Anyway, Aaron Rodgers, 6,500 going up against the Giants. I like him with Devontae Adams. I definitely think that's a pretty good correlation play. Andy Dalton, just because he's dirt cheap, they had him priced if he wasn't starting this week, and he got named the starter after prices came out. So 4,700 if you want to punt. This could be the way you get Travis Kelce, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, and all these guys in the same lineup. Christian McCaffrey. Josh Jacobs versus Kansas City. Now, I would have him as a core play, but my only concern here is if they fall behind, which I think they are 10-point dogs. And if they fall behind, we've seen Josh Jacobs completely get out of the game plan here and put up like 4 points. So if they can keep it close, I think Josh Jacobs is going to smash here. We know the Kansas City run defense is pretty much worse than the NFL. They're giving up the most points per game to running backs. So Josh Jacobs, if they can keep this game close, I think he should be able to eat here. I'd expect they want to keep the ball off Patrick Mahomes' hands as much as possible. So if I was the Raiders, I'd be running the ball all game just to eliminate the amount of time Patrick Mahomes has the ball in his hands. And I would think Josh Jacobs would have a pretty good game. He's one of the best running backs in almost every single category on PFF right now. In terms of elusive ratings, broken tackles, explosive runs, been very, very good this season. And then Jonathan Williams, he comes in at 5,300 versus Tennessee. He's been getting a ton of volume. Jordan Wilkins is non-existent at this point. Had 26 touches last game. Tennessee's bottom half in the league versus running back, so don't mind Jonathan Williams at 5,300. I believe he was in my example lineup video, the first look video that I put out on Monday. Jamal Williams is a cheap GPP flyer. At running back, he's going to get involved in the passing game. I believe he had 8 targets last week, and he's just really cheap, and he's been pretty consistent, so it wouldn't surprise me if he got double-digit points at only 4,500. D.D. Westbrook, if you can't pay all the way up for DJ Chark, I think he's a fine secondary option, considering he's only 5K, and he had a pretty good game last week. I believe got 9 targets last week, and obviously it's a great matchup versus Tampa Bay. Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate is out, Evan Ingram is out, and Rhett Ellison is out, so Sterling Shepard is pretty much the only guy there, him and Darius Slade. And then at 4,900 versus Green Bay, I think they're going to have to play catch up. I think he's an interesting option to run it back with if you're playing Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. You can run it back with Sterling Shepard, and I think that's a pretty decent GPP option, or stack, I should say. Sammy Watkins, if you can't spend all the way up for someone like Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, he's going to get close to double-digit targets in this game, and it's a great matchup versus Oakland. Then Demaryius Thomas, if you need a punt wide receiver, he's dirt cheap going up against Cincy, and he's been somewhat okay this season. I don't expect too much, but 3,600 versus Cincy, you could do a lot worse with Demaryius Thomas at 3,600. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Looking at my recording, my voice is like delayed, so hopefully it's not delayed in this video. Yeah, it's like still talking about Sammy Watkins, but anyway, I got 3% battery left, so I'm going to make this quick. I hope you guys have a fantastic week this week. We'll be doing my lineup building video tomorrow, or maybe even tonight. Probably tonight, actually. I'll probably try to get this out earlier, but I hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. Links below in the description below for my Twitter and Patreon, and I'll see you guys in the next video, and I wish you guys the best of luck, and I hope you guys win money.